A group of people known as the Hmong people, originally from China, fled to South Asia in the 1800s in an effort to escape a very hostile Chinese dynasty. Upon arriving in South Asia, the Hmong people struggled to gain their independence. Later, the Hmong people would be enlisted to help fight with the American military in the Vietnam War. Once the war ended in 1975, the new leadership viewed the Hmong people as traitors, so many survivors fled to the United States of America for safety. Many of the refugees could not speak English when they arrived in the States, which caused much stress on them. They suffered from poverty as well as traumas from things back home that they had endured. Beginning in 1977, over 100 refugees died in their sleep with no explanations. These deaths were happening to seemingly healthy 20 to 30-year-old Hmong men. The first victim was Lai Hoya, a Hmong medic. Hoya's death was reported on in the LA Times, who later covered 20 more stories like his over the following 4 years. In these cases, there were several witnesses whom reported the victims groaning or even noticed them start to have breathing issues shortly before their deaths. Other witnesses claimed the victims reported having nightmares several nights prior to their deaths. One story published by the LA Times told the story of a refugee child that was terrified to go to sleep and how he feared being attacked in his sleep and never waking up. This child finally fell asleep and his parents thought everything would be okay. Next thing they knew, they heard him screaming in the middle of the night and rushed to him. Sadly, by the time they reached him, he was dead. He died in the middle of his nightmare. This publication landed in the hands of Wes Craven, inspiring him to create A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger. Now, before we get too far in, let's continue with the history. In 1981, 26 more Hmong men would die in their sleep. This caused the Federal Center for Disease Control to look into these deaths and labeled it Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome, or SUNDS, S-U-N-D-S. A 1981 publication tells the story of a Laotian refugee, Yong Ling Theo. He had relocated to the U.S. with his family from Thailand. Shortly after, the 47-year-old dies in his sleep beside his wife. Investigators could find no medical reason for his death. Some believe it was due to stress. Some believed nerve gas. And many believed it was a spirit coming in the night
Welcome to my nightmare.
Punish them from leaving their homelands. These deaths are still unexplained. There was a survivor who decided to tell their story of what it was like to experience what he believes was a sun's attack. He said, "First I was surprised, but right away I got real scared. I was lying in bed. There was a dark shadow in the night. I was so tired because I was working very hard then. I wanted to go to school, but I had no money. I kept waking up because I was thinking so much about my problems. I heard a noise, but then I turned and tried, but I could not move. My bedroom looked the same, but I could see in the corner a dark shape was coming to me. It came to my bed, over my feet, and my legs. It was very heavy, like a heavy weight over my whole body, my legs, and my chest. I tried to yell so someone sleeping very close to me would hear. I tried to move, using a force that a strength that I can have. I thought, what if I die? After a long time, it went away. It just left. I got up and turned all the lights on. I was afraid to sleep again. The mystery of the deaths are even more frightening than the serial murderer of Hollywood that Wes Craven would be inspired to bring to life. In 1984, 3 years after Wes Craven read some articles in the LA Times, A Nightmare on Elm Street was released. He would later recall one of the stories in an interview with Vulture, in which a 21-year-old that was so scared of his nightmares were going to kill him that he refused to go to sleep. His family grew concerned about his health and tried to give him some pills to help him to go to sleep, which was later discovered in his bed. He eventually fell asleep a short time later, only to begin having a nightmare while screaming and thrashing around in his bed. Once again, when the family found this man, it was too late, and he had passed away with no cause of death. After this, and upon searching his room, the family discovered a coffee maker also hidden in his room, showing his determination to stay awake. Now, as disturbing as this is, especially with the causes still being a mystery, Freddy Krueger's backstory is even darker. Over the series of films, we learn more and more about his history through the writings and productions of Wes Craven, as well as the acting portrayed by Robert Englund. Freddy's mother, Amanda Krueger, was a nun who was accidentally locked inside an asylum, resulting in being raped multiple times by many criminally insane patients that led to the birth of Freddy. After his birth, he was sent to live with a foster father, Mr. Underwood, who was an abusive alcoholic. While dealing with so much at home, he was also being bullied in school. He later started showing early signs of what his future would hold by killing animals and committing self-harm. When he grew tired of the abuse by his foster father, he committed his first murder and killed Mr. Underwood. As an adult, Freddy would marry a woman named Loretta and eventually have a daughter, Catherine. He was a blue-collar worker whom killed his child victims in a boiler room using his signature homemade glove of knives. Freddy tried to maintain a normal life around his family, but Loretta ended up finding his secret room where he held his gloved weapons as well as murder mementos. When he was confronted by his wife, he lost it and killed her in front of their daughter. This is what led to his capture that we start off with in the movie, when his daughter tells, after promising Freddy that she wouldn't say a word. Freddy was a serial child killer and named the Springwood Slasher. It was also implied in the films that Freddy was a child molester. Catherine was placed in foster care under a new identity, and Freddy was arrested on multiple murders of local children. At this point, it is said that Freddy was released on charges due to a technicality which triggered a community to hunt him down. When the parents of his victims found him, he was then burned alive. It was at this point that Freddy, while being burnt alive, would be approached by the dream demons and given an opportunity to continue his killing spree and seek revenge. Freddy had almost all control once he got into your dreams. He could shapeshift, move items telepathically, and even change the manifestations of dreams, creating nightmares of blood and death. The dreamers would suffer the same deaths in real life that they suffered in their dreams. That is the real story of how Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise was born. The franchise includes 9 movies, a television series, comic books, video games, and a set of 5 novels, as well as bobbleheads, action figures, and replica clubs. Freddy Krueger would go on to become named the 14th greatest villain of all time by Wizard magazine, 8th by Sky 2 out of Britain, and 40th on the American Film Institute's 100 Years and 100 Heroes and Villains list.
5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep.